So, yeah. Terra Nil. Had this one on my radar for a while now. Just picked it up, and, yeah. I'm bringing the green back. Still some brown over in the water. Okay, now some of it's clean. I like how the two waters don't mix. Just kind of sit there, side by side. In complete defiance of all natural law. Yeah, this is going to be a problem. Terra Nil comes to us from Free Lives, a developer in Cape Town responsible for some very not Terra Nil games like Broforce and Gorn. Good on them for stepping out of their comfort zone and a little more into mine, huh? Originally a free-to-play game, Terra Nil sells itself as a reverse city builder. The player is charged with restoring a world that has been destroyed by pollution and industry. The story isn't completely clear, but it appears as if humanity is returning to Earth after a long time away with the goal of making their former home planet livable again. And look, I don't mean to be rude, but this isn't a reverse city builder. It's also not a restoration simulator. I'm not sure what genre I would put Terra Nil in. I've been thinking about it for a while now, and maybe the best thing is just to explain how the game works. You start off with a barren wasteland. There is no life, no water, it's dry, cold, dead. Your job is to bring it back. First up, energy. Usually it's wind turbines, but there are some other options in later levels. Next up, toxin scrubbers. These machines get rid of all the poison in the soil and water, making it ready for planting. After that, irrigators. These fountains water the newly cleansed soil, bringing the green back to the land. And hold on a minute. The whole point of this game was to rebuild an ecosystem, isn't it? Cleaning toxic substances out of the ground isn't usually an easy thing to do. And replenishing the nutritive properties of soil, I don't even know how we start with that in the case of dead rock and dirt. But this whole phase is 3 actions. Watch. Power. Cleanse. Water. And now we're ready to grow biomes. A review described this as an overpriced tile flipping game. That's a grossly unfair oversimplification, but it's not without a nugget of truth. On the surface, Terra Nil looks like an environment restoration simulator. To make the case for why it's not, I need to bring up another game. One with a very smart take on environmentalism and whose design was closer to what Terra Nil is advertising itself as. On the surface, Oxygen Not Included is not an environmentalist game. You arrive in a natural, untouched world and begin to carve the thing up for your own survival and profit. How is that a lesson in environmentalism? Well, let's look at a comparative study, okay? Power generation. 3 power generators from Terra Nil, and 3 from Oxygen Not Included. And at this point, I'm just going to shorten that to ONI, okay? Okay. So the first power generator you get in Terra Nil is the wind turbine. Given the game's green message, it's no surprise that we have immediate access to green energy. These turbines are limited in that they can only be placed on rock, of which there are only a few spots in the game. Each turbine can support 6 power-requiring machines. They have a range of about 16 by 16 squares, centered on the turbine. The first generator you get in ONI is the manual generator. Now, arguably this is the greenest possible power source, as it's literally a hamster wheel. The only output is the CO2 the operator is breathing. It puts out 400 watts of energy while active and can support up to that many machines. Energy in ONI is measured in divisible amounts, so some machines can require more or less energy. It does, however, have one of the biggest drawbacks. Manual generators are a full-time job, and you have a limited number of crew members, growing shorter by the day. The second generator in Terra Nil is the thermal plant. These can only be built on lava flows, which you have to release and guide through explosives. So theoretically, you could put a plant anywhere on the map as long as you can get the lava there. They have a range of about 16 by 16 squares, but they can support a total of 10 power-requiring machines. The second generator in ONI is the coal generator. This is one of the things I really like about ONI. It recognizes that sometimes stopgaps are needed on the way to better things. Coal generation provides a lot of power, and it frees up workers for other projects. Initially, coal is readily mined and readily available, but it becomes more difficult to find over time in more dangerous areas. This makes sustainability and the safety of your crew a big issue. Also, coal generates a lot of carbon dioxide, and that has to be accounted for. ONI doesn't shy away from the consequences of expediency. The third generator in Terra Nil is the hydroelectric plant. This plant has to be placed in deep water, which can be found near the ocean, a few ponds, or you can dig some out with a dredger. It can support 8 power-requiring machines, and it has a range of about 16 tiles. Oni actually has 8 generators, and none are really analogs to the Terra Nil ones. But it does have one option that Terra Nil strangely omits: solar panels. Solar panels provide a moderate amount of power, and they have no waste, but their output varies depending on the light levels, and they have to be protected from inclement weather, aka asteroids. But if Terra Nil did have solar panels, odds are good that its only properties would be the range, which would be about 16 by 16 tiles, the number of machines it can support, probably somewhere between 6 and 10, and a restriction for placing it. I'm gonna guess it would have been, high up on a hill. And this is my illustration of why Terra Nil is not a reverse city builder or a restoration simulator. Both those genres require something to actually be simulated. Instead, it's closer to a spatial optimization puzzle that functions a little like a board game. The generators in Terra Nil do not generate anything. They are markers for where power-consuming machines can be placed. There is no real consequence for using them. You can have too few for your plan, but the game strangely forbids putting generators near each other, meaning you're limited in your total power output. I guess wind turbines don't work well in teams, huh? Each of Terra Nil's machines are game pieces, which change the environment around them, either allowing something else to be placed on the board, or increasing the meter that determines your success. Your goal is not really to create a functioning environment. Instead, you're laying out dominoes. Place down a turbine and you can place a scrubber. Place a scrubber and you can place an irrigator. Place an irrigator and you can place a beehive. Place a beehive and you get a finbow. Burn that finbow and you can place a forest. Put that forest on a hill and you can have a bear. Note that all the pieces are single use. If you clean land near an irrigator, even if it's within range, the irrigator will not automatically water the land. It's done. The machines in Terra Nil aren't generators, destroyers, or effectors. All the strategy is in geographic placement to maximize the biome spread. But it still is about restoring an environment, so why is Oni, with its tendency to carve and chop things up, a better example? So there's poisonous materials in Oni. Not everything is useful. Well, most things are useful, you just gotta know how to use them. But there are poisonous materials, multiple kinds. Chlorine is corrosive, slime is infectious. The surface is literally bathed in radiation. Dealing with them requires careful consideration of the substance, the threat they pose, and how that threat is conveyed. And the solution will always have a side effect. It's up to you to develop a system that keeps your people fed and alive. To succeed in Oni, you need to understand the environment and your relationship to it. Failing to understand this will be your downfall in Oni, because everything has to go somewhere and you do not get something for nothing. This is very much what environmental science is struggling to hammer home into the public's collective skulls. So, what was I actually expecting from Terra Nil? In short, depth. I was expecting a deep system crafted to enable a pathfinding experiment from desolation to restoration. We have greater technology than ever, but we're also facing greater environmental threats than ever. It'll be up to us to use our science and our engineering to come up with solutions, and I really wanted to see Free Lives' depiction of how that could happen. I expected Terra Nil to give me a plot of toxic, barren land and the tools to get the process started. That isn't Terra Nil. If Oni refuses to wave anything away, Terra Nil waves its hands whenever things get hard. You place beehives to grow flowers. Where did we get seeds from? Increase the local humidity and birds will come back. I thought this whole planet was dead. How are there birds? The toxin scrubber can clean water in its range, but it doesn't mix with the polluted water? Why doesn't lava cause fires? Does this meter actually matter, or is it just for show? Yet Terra Nil, it shows the potential for the interdependent systems I pine for. If you start a controlled burn in one finbow, it'll spread to any attached one, along with any nearby grassland. My first controlled burn had me in a panic thinking it was going to take out my whole map. It didn't, but only because the fires couldn't burn a wetland. Now that makes sense and feels kind of clever, right? Wetlands serve as natural fire breaks, so my fire couldn't go through it. But it also couldn't burn my forest, which doesn't make a ton of sense. It would have sucked to have my whole map burned down because I was careless, but that would have been a valuable learning experience. Every future plan I came up with would have fire safety in it. It doesn't seem to be possible to screw things up in Terra Nil. Oh, you can run out of like the leaf bucks up there, which if you run out you'll have to restart, but you can't screw up the environment to the point of no return. And since games are quick, there's not much of a feeling of loss if you have to restart. So why can't forest fires happen? Probably because it would have been pointless. Growing forests is as easy as putting a building on burned ground. Like really, put arboretum on burned ground and forest appears out of it. The remains of a forest fire are burned ground, including the ashy pile the arboretum was on, so you just put another one on and you've got your forest back. It's kind of the nature of Terra Nil's somewhat simplistic approach. A forest fire is a potentially disastrous event in the real world which can take a long time to recover from. But it would have been negligible in Terra Nil, so they're just kind of made impossible. Once the charm of growing fields wears off, you start to realize how little Terra Nil really involves you. There's a digital manual for restoration, but it's not a reference. It's the whole game plan. You aren't really in charge of this restoration, you're just the guy who sees it through. You're not the architect, you're the painter. You can't color outside the lines, you don't get to run ahead, you can't go against the plan. Now why do I want to break the plan? Well, because in Oxygen... Okay, fine. I'll put Oni away. But I'm gonna pull out Neon White. Okay, Neon White, speedrunning, distilled into a gameplay loop. Each level of Neon White has a very clear path from beginning to end. This is okay. This is fun. Game's well designed. But you know what's more fun? Figuring out the game's hidden shortcut. And you know what's more fun than that? Figuring out your own shortcuts. This game is designed with the expectation that the player will break the plan and come up with their own. If you watch a devs react of Neon White speedrunners, you'll quickly find that today's speedrunners are finding routes the developers never imagined and are frankly shocked are even possible. But they designed the game for that to be possible, where the plan was breakable. If you were good enough or smart enough, Neon White trusts that the players will be smarter than the developers. Terra Nil doesn't want you to ever do this, to ever go against its scripture. And I'm not sure why. On the one hand, the forest fire issue suggests that they just couldn't figure out how to make a functional dynamic system and could only pull off a static additive one. But with how carefully Terra Nil scripts the path from start to finish, I have to wonder if they aren't afraid of the player failing. Free Lives' goal was to create a game where the player could restore the world. And maybe they were trying to avoid disheartening failures that might go against the game's hopeful message. If so, I think that was a mistake. There is a gravity to the problem of environmental destruction, and portraying it as a straightforward path almost guaranteed to succeed does it a disservice. The fantasy of Terra Nil is to be the savior of a world. Okay, actually that's every video game, what am I saying? It's to be the restorer of a world, the reverser, the guy who beats Hexus, the guy who summons Captain Planet, except, realistic. I wanted it to be my efforts and my plan, and to have the resulting biosphere be my creation. I didn't want that to be given to me. I didn't want my accomplishment decided ahead of time. I didn't want to be the carpenter following another architect's plan. So Terra Nil isn't a reverse city builder. And it isn't a restoration simulator, so is it a bad game? Well, no. It's a little clunky at first, and some aspects are kinda tedious, especially the recycling, but I still played through the whole thing and kind of enjoyed myself. It's not that there's no challenge, there's just little flexibility. No real feeling of personal investment. My distaste is mostly in comparison to what it could have, and per the advertisement, should have been. The game was $25, that's more than Hollow Knight, and that game is arguably underpriced. I don't think anyone could be blamed for feeling a little cheated that Terra Nil isn't what it says it is, even if the game itself is serviceable. For what it is, it's fun, it's charming, it's, chill. While you won't be allowed to really tinker with the game or push its limits, you can make some pretty vistas. There's still a sense of accomplishment in min-maxing your irrigation and setting the stage for a large finbow or seeing wetlands pop up out of nowhere. It's still cool. You start with dust and ruin, you end with rivers and rain. The game still delivers that change, even if the way you get there is less cities, skylines, and more Tripletown. What, am I the only one who remembers that game? There was, however, one moment that did take my breath away. If you get your temperature and humidity up to a certain level, weather patterns come back to the world. And the first time I witnessed it, I saw this. Not only is it visually cool, but the rainwaters washed away the remaining toxins, cleaning water and land that my machines couldn't reach, finishing the work I'd started. It felt, for the first time, like a culmination of something, that I'd finally achieved a miracle of restoration and got to witness it. I think that's when I got Terra Nil. This isn't a game about restoration. Terra Nil is a game about appreciation. This wasn't made for astronomers, it was made for stargazers. You don't go into Terra Nil because you want to be an environmental engineer, you go in because you want to see the green overtake the gray. You want to see the forest spring from the dead earth. This game is for people who want to see life triumph over desolation, which is most of us, including me. And it paints a very beautiful picture, just not a very clear picture. This is why, however much I enjoyed watching my creations idle in their restored environments, I couldn't help leaving Terra Nil with a bit of melancholy. Generations of real people have been careless with resources and the products of their use. We're making progress in some places, but it's a global problem and some of our strongest powers stand in opposition. What I wanted from Terra Nil was a game that would show me that it was always possible to come back from the brink. That the struggle would be real, hard, paved with failure, but ultimately possible. There is no system for this in Terra Nil. The solution to environmental damage is not going to be easy, and it's not going to come from magic machines which automatically restore ideal conditions. For the developers of Terra Nil to advertise it as a reverse city builder when it is clearly not sends an awful message that they couldn't do it. And if they couldn't do it in a simulation, can we do it in reality? Well, like I said, Terra Nil isn't my favorite environmentalist game. And if I can figure out how to make toilets work in oxygen not included without flooding the world with piss, then maybe we can figure it out here too. And I will figure it out. Just hold your breath for a couple days, okay, everyone? Thank you. Alright. Thanks for playing, everyone. This episode was brought to you by Drecos. Do you need a pet? A furry or scaly companion? Have you ever thought to yourself, what if I put a sheep and a lizard in a room together and the unholiest of interactions occurred? Did you enjoy that thought? Well then Drecos might be the companion of choice for you. Dreco ownership is skyrocketing in the colony, just listen to these testimonials. People who own Drecos report high levels of satisfaction, high levels of stress reduction, high levels of fiber production, and a higher than average level of being woken up in the middle of the night by the end result of evolution gone horribly wrong. But if you're the kind of person who looks at unholy crimes against nature and thinks, "Aww," well then Drecos might be the pet for you. You can find Drecos living in a cloud of chlorine gas in the caustic biome to the northwest of the starting biome. Just ask Nesbit, Ashkan? Devon. Just drill up and to the right. Wear goggles. Drecos, not just for breakfast anymore.